All right. So this is our first discussion here on video game here with Cloudy, aka Scope of Culture, and we're going to be discussing New World today.
New World. What is it? You know?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing I was thinking about the other day is I realized it wasn't an RPG MMO, and so if it's not an MMO RPG, what would you classify it as?
It's like a resource gatherer. Like a it's definitely about the crafting.
Crafting and seems to be like about the world PvP, and I'm curious how like PvE is gonna fit into that, um, especially coming from a strong PvE background.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be about the PvP. There's not a lot of PvP included in it at all, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
PvE or
They
PvP?
PvE.
PvE.
They have the rifts, I guess, whatever they're called, that spawn in, and those are most of the PvE action. And from what I could tell, um, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was going to be too crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I feel like, and I've tried to reset my expectations for the game, and that's like one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you know, what are your expectations for the game look like? Because I've had to change mine after trying to figure out, like we played in the density test, and I realized this isn't an RPG MMO where they have like we can't expect it to have a skill tree and expect it to have like this intense character development leveling system because it's not an RPG MMO. It's something else. It's like an action PvP MMO almost. So it's like my expectations have had to change and reset to where I've set them really low. And when I go in it, I want to try to experience the game for what it is, not what I think, or not like comparing it to something else. Like I can't compare it to WoW anymore. I can't compare it to Final Fantasy anymore because it's not in the same genre as those in a sense. So how does that affect or your expectations, or what are your expectations for the game?
I've definitely removed all my expectations of the game. Um, upon first making realization of the game, and then now having played a little bit of it, and have researched it a little bit. I mean, obviously, everybody throws it right in with MMORPG, and like you said, it's just not that's not the game it is, and so you can't have the expectations of having that. It's its own sort of uh, it's its own sort of thing, and so coming in with new expectations of a new kind of game, I think is the best way
Yeah.
to come at it.
So like,
So sort of a blank slate.
what is
Uh,
that? How does that make you feel though? Because I know that you had said before you were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not thrilled. I'm looking for an MMORPG, so this is definitely going to be something that's gonna occupy me for as long as it can.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, who knows? It could surprise me, and it could come out with some really good content in the PvP side. It could come out with some decent content in the PvE side. I like the
Right.
gathering. I like the crafting. Um, so that all piques my interest, but it falls short a little bit. For in my expectations of what I currently want to play.
Right.
And that's a deep story rich MMORPG where you go into big raids and fight off big monsters and things like that.
Yeah, and I think
Uh,
that's fair. And that's more of like your classic. I don't know how WoW is nowadays, but it's more of I know Final Fantasy definitely has that rich storyline. They just revamped it, shortened it, cut out like the chunks of it. But yeah, this game, I think for me, it's gonna have to. I'm trying to change my mindset where when I play it, I want to really aim to enjoy the PvP. I mean, I know I'm a PvP player because I grew up on Halo. We play a lot of battle royale games, so like shouldn't be a big deal. I've never been a big PvPer in MMOs, like WoW and in Guild Wars, even, which is a heavy PvP MMO, and in Final Fantasy. I don't know what kind of PvP Final Fantasy has. I've never played that, but I've never, even in Terra, I wasn't a big PvPer, and so I think that's what makes it difficult for me to kind of have this mindset of like I'm gonna go into this MMO playing PvP because I'm not used to that. But I know I can enjoy it, and I think that's the mindset change I have to have. Is like, this is a PvP type game. In order to enjoy this game, you're gonna have to play it that way.
All right. I am excited for it. I don't want to give the impression that I'm not excited to play it. I definitely think I'm going to enjoy it for a while, but there's something else that needs to come out to like itch that
Yeah,
itch that scratch that
yeah.
I want to play.
And I think I agree. And I think we were talking about this discussion isn't about Ashes of Creation in general, but we talked about that, and we'll do a video on that later. But I think that might be in that genre that we're waiting for.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully that's the one. I mean, I know everybody's always thinking that. Hopefully this is the next big one. But...
Yeah. Because we're all waiting. WoW's so saturated now with content, so saturated with guilds and people and high-level players that I think what we all need is just something fresh that we can jump into on the same playing field rather than having these games that we feel like are already like, for instance, just making content about a game is difficult when jumping into Smite, for instance, it's got 10 years of content out there. If anything you would want to cover is already covered, but you can also offer your own look at it too, so that's something to be said there.
Well, let's talk about the sounds in the game. I don't know if you paid much attention to the sounds in the game while you were playing it. Did you, or is that something you didn't even really think about?
I'm not sure. Well, tell me what you're thinking.
I thought that they did an excellent job, like a really really good job, like enough to bring up the fact that we should bring up the sounds. I think when you're walking around and somebody's knocking a rock or logging a tree, the sound is like spot on.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
definitely.
just like ting and like echoes sort of throughout the area and off the caverns and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't know how
So
much this like
I was like
bleeds
really
into the
surprised.
NDA though, as
I
far
was
as that
really
is.
surprised.
I would say that they were high quality, and I was also surprised, and it gives you a sense of immersion into the
That's what I
game.
was gonna say. Yeah, it gives you this immersion. Um, so even though the content available is pretty simple, you still like we're so lost in the world because of the sounds. You
Yeah,
know.
and you'd be walking down, and you're like, you'd hear the tink on the rocks or the chopping on the tree, and you're looking around for the guy that's you know harvesting the wood or mining. Um, and I felt like, and maybe like a big reason why I didn't notice them is because they were so good. Like, we've played other games recently where you're like, you remember it being like as if they had pulled it from some archive of 80s level sound effects. Whereas this one, they obviously went and recorded some high quality, high definition sounds. Um, I have here, uh, you know, is thinking about how when I'm trying to read through my notes here and find out and see if we've already talked about this stuff. So I already said that like I can't compare it to WoW or Final Fantasy. What challenges, or with it said that we can't compare it to those other MMOs, it still needs challenging objectives that feed invested players, but ones that fit like a unique style, that are unique to this game, not something they're just copy and paste. So like, what kind of things do you think they could add, or what could this game look like if there was if it had its own unique thing that wasn't raids per se, but kind of replaced it, or wasn't even, I don't know, they need something more than world events. So like, what could it be? What could they have?
I mean, I don't know.
It's definitely a difficult question.
Something new, something exciting.
I almost feel like it has to be some sort of instance environment. I feel like instancing is the only way, short of like VR, it's the only way you can create a unique experience for a player. Because I was trying to even think about like quests, and when you do a quest in Final Fantasy 14, some of those quests bring you into an instance where you're separate from the world, but it still like fits the story, that quest line, and where you're at currently. So it pulls you away from other players so they can't interfere and they can't see what you're doing, but it allows this immersion of being able to fight this mini boss in this quest line real quick and like have this experience. So I almost feel like they gotta have something like that, or make it so the quests can be experienced in a way where you feel like you're participating in the world. Because having a giant like world event where anybody can come in, a couple things tend to happen. Like in Destiny, either not enough people showed up to a big world event, or too many people showed up. And I always saw that as a problem. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I mean, this game, I don't think this game it can't add in raids. I mean, maybe it could add in raids, but it can't add in quests and stuff like that. At this point, it's not an MMORPG. So what does it need to make it stand out? Something different. I mean, something different.
Yeah.
Something PvP oriented. Like I know that's kind of what they're trying to do with the castle raids and stuff like that, and maybe that's what it's going to be. Maybe there's something inside of that realm. I didn't really get to try that any, so I don't know too much about it. But maybe something inside of there. There's an idea that's going to grow out of that. That maybe this game needs. Like maybe it's people building these like really elaborate castles and bases that ended up getting defended, or people trying to go in there and loot them and things like that. I don't know.
I think it's gonna come down to how, not inclusive, I don't think that's the right word, but basically how much of a role you feel you're playing in those. Guild Wars 2, when I played it, it kind of had these big player on player raids, or PvP like world events. And it felt like almost that you could just run around doing nothing, and the objectives were still getting done. And which was nice for low level new players, but you'd have like these level 10s in there just kind of running around doing nothing, and you have these like, I don't know, I don't remember what the level gap was like, but I just remember, and it could have been a different game too, but I was playing an MMO that had that, and it was just, you felt like you didn't have to participate. And I feel like for me, it's going to come down to how much I feel like I have to participate in this PvP experience. How much the things that I do have a pull on, uh, what's happening, and how easy it is to organize a team. I know they were talking about in one of their videos about it, something they released where you're gonna have, um, it's pulling from a group of players, I guess, and only up to like 50. So I don't know how it decides that. If it's from the people who live in the town, and have like bought buildings and houses within that town, or what, or if it's just pulling from the people that have been in that area. Um, but if it pulls the wrong people and it doesn't allow you some sort of sense of like, hey, we're a guild, we're a company, we get to participate in this as a company of people, um, that can create a strategy, who can practice doing these battles, who can kind of strategize on Discord, then I feel like it's just going to kind of be this running around of everybody doing aimless stuff, and people being, who really want to focus on it, being frustrated. Like I could see myself being frustrated and not being able to accomplish it because nobody's, helping out.
Right. Yeah, the balance.
And it's also got to be
Um,
rewards too, rewards have to be good.
I do think that allotting people jobs um, is crucial in this genre of game. I mean, again, it's hard to say with this specific genre, but you know, with an MMO, I think allotting people roles is crucial, and having those roles be meaningful. So if you learn to craft, and crafting is your trade, uh, for people to want the items that you're crafting,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
and to make it so that people can't do everything. Like it's, you've got to be able to, like, some people have to be, want to be crafters, or the like that part of the game sort of falls apart. You know what I mean? Like it just has to be that way. Like that's what makes a game so good. Um, is that feeling that you're needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
With whatever role you choose, and that's the same whether you're looking at classes. Your classes have to be viable and feel like they're needed, and your lifestyle choice or whatever it is, whether you're a hunter or gatherer or whatever, it just has to feel needed.
Yeah, I'd agree. Cause like you can't be, if you're able to be easily, anyways, like let's say within a month I could have 3 different crafts, um maxed out, and could provide my own gear for my mage, my own gear for my tank or whatever, sword guy, and my own gear for my musket guy, and I can do all those things on my own without help from anybody else. Like, is that what you're saying? Like, it needs to be that I can't master all those things. If I'm spending time mastering being a
Right.
healer, then I am not spending time mastering this other thing, and they take so long, each of
Right.
them, that I have to rely on you that might be mastering one of those.
Right. That's what you need. And you, for those solo players out there, like, there should be a way around it with your person per se. I mean, like, you shouldn't necessarily have to have friends to be able to do it. You should be able to match make, or whatever the
Right.
case may be. But
Well, they should have to
but each
solicit in the
role,
game, right? Where they're like, "Hey, I need a crafter of this
yeah,
craft," kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Because I don't think.
And you could maybe make it so like you could maybe do that. You don't necessarily have to put it in the chat. Like maybe there's like a way where you can search like
Mm,
I
mm-hmm.
need a crafter of this level, and then it could even necessarily it could even maybe like give you a list of the people who are that level, and you could DM certain people. You know what I mean? Or whatever,
Yeah,
personal message.
yeah. I could see that as something that would be a nice feature to a game like this, especially if it's built around crafting and PvP. And PvP isn't just player versus player in battle. In my opinion, PvP is player versus player in all aspects. So player interaction, player. I mean, it is an MMO. If you want to be able to do stuff solo completely 100%, go play a single player game.
Right,
Horizon is a great game for that. It
right.
has the crafting system. It has all these cool things. This nice big world. It's probably got a better world than New World does. It's um there's a
That's
lot
what
of
it comes
games out
down
there
to.
like that.
I think that's what it comes down to. Is you can't cater to the soloist as much as the soloist wants you to cater to him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is
Because it's an
an
MMO.
MMO.
It is an MMO. You
Um
should be able to do a lot of it, solo as much as you can, but there should be certain parts of the game where you just have to be a part of the society.
yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important that they maintain that, and for players too to remember that. Like, it's kind of like Diablo. When we played Diablo 3 and all the casual players started complaining, um, of course, maybe we were the minority that they decided, like, well, this is a. But I don't know. I always felt like Diablo was such a hardcore game and not a casual game. And
Yeah.
they
Agreed.
decided to cater to the casual players, which was the larger player base, instead of niching into the hardcore players, and it cut us out. I guess what I'm saying is they almost have to do that with the single player minded players and focus on that player interaction. Because if you don't, you end up with what you're talking about, where I can do everything in the game by myself and I don't need anybody.
Right.
And I don't think that's. And I think the rift should be harder. Me and you were running up there with two people. Um,
Low level, no low gear.
yeah, just like completing a rift. I could almost do it myself. I was running up there by myself and almost completing it. And then you came in and made it just like we just did it. We completed the rift, and not to talk too much about the rifts because they're under NDA, but it's in my opinion that sort of stuff, any sort of world content, they really need to either include a wide range of like, here's the stuff that you can solo, here's stuff you can do with two people, here's stuff you can do with 3 to 5, and then these are your 20 mans, and then make them like you can only do that with, you have to have 3 to 5 people. If you don't have a minimum of 3, you can't complete it.
Right.
And Final Fantasy did a cool thing where if you came into a low level thing, your level would be automatically adjusted to that thing in the world event. They have world events where you come in, it's a level 15, you can level sync with it, and it changes your level to level 15 to make it just as difficult for you as everybody else. And they could do something like that to keep level 50s, 60s from rolling in and just wiping them out for, I don't know, maybe for kicks and giggles. So that's something I was thinking about. What does the crafting system have to look like to you in a little more detail than you've already shared for you personally to be satisfied with it?
Um, I would like to see. I like to see, just depth. The more depth that they can put into it, the better. So, whatever, it may be blacksmithing, and then you could do like armor or weapons, and then you could even start to specialize in, swords and shields, or two-handed weapons, or uh, bows and long-range weapons, staffs and things like that. You could be an enchanter that, like, once weapons are made and they're like finally made, someone then enchants them with uh, different types of spells or things that they utilize as enchantments. You know, things like that. A jeweler. um, whatever. A refiner. You could even do like a refiner. I like to have just the more different things you can do, the better, I guess, because that gives people the kind of thing where they like feel like they can do multiple things, but you just can't do everything. I don't know. You just can't
Right.
be able to do everything. The more times you can separate it, the better, I guess, because
Yeah.
it makes it harder to do everything.
And I think
You don't want to
too,
feel like the stuff you are doing isn't leveling up fast enough, or like it's a big drag, and you don't want to feel like it's not valuable, but
right.
you want enough stuff to do, you want it to be so much stuff.
I think one way
Once
that
your character runs out of stuff to upgrade, you're done playing the game.
yeah, yeah, and that's
Even
the
if
big
there's
problem.
more story or more stuff to do in the world, more than likely you're done, because you're done. You know what I mean? Your character's got the best gear. He's you've experienced all the game that you want to experience, because your part of the game is done. And you know, I've played games longer than the story because my character wasn't done upgrading. You know what I mean? Like, because I wanted to see, oh well, what
Yeah.
happens if I get this skill, or what happens if I go do this.
Yeah, it's kind of like what
Uh,
I was talking about with Pokemon the other day is, in the reason you can beat the Pokemon game and then keep playing it for another 100 2 hours is because there's 500 more Pokemon to go catch and raise and try different players. Not only that, when you beat the game, your Pokemon are only like level 40, 50. So you've got another 50 to 40, 50 levels to raise your Pokemon. And that's just your starting team. And you might want to go catch this other one. Like, I still had Pokemon I wanted to catch when I beat it on the Switch just last week. And that's what a game like this needs. And what you're saying is like it needs that long term, what happens after you've done the content. And I think that can easily come from the crafting system. And I think that's one thing a lot of games don't do, and that's why the crafting systems fail, is because the game doesn't rely heavily enough on the crafting system. WoW had a big problem with this, where crafting was useful for maybe 10, if we're lucky, 20% of the whole of crafting. And that was only on maybe the max gear that you can make in crafting. It was only like one piece of gear. Any pieces of gear on any of the other levels, you could just run over to this quest line, complete it, and get a piece of gear that was not just like 10% better, but 2 or 3 times better. And it killed the crafting system because there was no need to craft other than to level up your crafting.
right.
And that's, you got to have more than that. You got to be, when you're level 5, that a crafter can make better gear than you can get from quests. But you don't have to find a crafter. You could go do the quests and you just have, the subpar gear. But anything that requires you to spend more time in the game should be valuable, not less valuable. If that makes sense. But for me, I would have to agree. I need depth. I need player reliance on the crafting system. So one thing they could do is make resources rarer, for the higher levels of gear. Have the basic
Right.
stuff. If you want a basic steel sword, and I did feel like, and it was just a density test, the resources were slim for just a basic steel sword. But if you want a basic steel sword, great. I can probably provide you with the materials. You just pay me for it. But if you want I don't know, a higher level than steel sword that has a special ore and all this stuff, then either you need to bring that stuff to me because it's hard as crap to get, or you're going to pay me high dollar because it's hard for me to get, but I'm more likely to have it than you are.
Right.
And that's another thing, is because I'm putting time into the craft, I have those materials. I know where they're at. I have the access to them. But it's not easy and I did like that in the density. There were some times where the resources weren't easy to get to, but it's not easy for me to get to those resources, and it's not easy for you to get to them, or even less easy.
Information has become valueless. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so they, um, instead of being like, okay, I've spent time in the game and in this craft looking for these materials, this, that, and the other, so I have them, I know where they're at, you can pay me for them. People can just look online, go right to the spot, get the materials. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no value anymore.
Right. Yeah, because you can just look it up. Um,
Um, and finding a way to bring that value back
Whether
into the
it's that you can
uh,
own, like, almost like you were talking about, farm the resources. Maybe there's some resources that you can only farm, and farming them's not easy. You have to collect this certain material in the world, but then you have to be dedicating those materials to the farming, and then because you're farming it, you're the person with the access to it.
right.
And then on top
Or
of that, you have to have a vast majority of things you can farm, because if you only have five things, well, then you could literally go to anybody because there's only
right,
five. But if there's 50 and I'm working on that one thing to farm, it's going to be harder to find that material.
right. And different things maybe are from different areas. And you could even make it so that if your gathering goes up, things start to spawn on nodes. I guess that
Yeah.
makes it difficult if you're playing an MMO, but
I think that would be cool. Like if I'm running around harvesting herbs all the time, but then once I hit level like 60, I now get, and I think they had some of that, but like if I now got this like rare item from the herbs, but that has to be the only place I can get it. So only
right,
as a level 60 gatherer can I get that thing, but then as a level 100, and not because they're like, I think there were, like, let's just say there were copper, silver, and gold, and gold's the highest level, and you can go and like find that. Um, you know, like what you're saying is, what if the gold came from the regular nodes, but only when you're that level or whatever,
right,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
The exclusivity of materials versus the difficulty of learning a craft
Right. Now,
would
how would you
bring in
feel
that
if they put these rare resources in a high level PvP area? Where you go to find those materials, it's a automatic PvP zone, and that's what makes it hard. What would you feel about that? Like, other players come in, and if they defeat you, they get to mine it.
value. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's not like I guess it's not like, you know, I don't know, it's not as exclusive, I guess. I mean, I guess anybody could run in there and get it at any level.
Well, not at any level. Let's say the mobs in that area or leading to that area are also high level. So
Yeah, I mean, you could still technically get it at any level. You know what I mean? I guess if you ran through all the mobs, got the thing, and then ran back whatever kind of trail.
yeah,
Um, and
they
it
could.
doesn't. It's not necessarily level locked. It's just a matter of being the best. So the best people on the server will always kind of be the best because they have access to the best mats, and so they can sell them at the highest prices, and then have all the best gear. You know what I mean? Like there's almost like a
An elitist
yeah.
thing,
It makes it
da-
hard
like a
to
danger there.
yeah.
Um, I mean, you could. What about like loot drop? Like if you kill somebody, you can take a portion of their loot, or and then if somebody is mining in that area and you run in there and can kill them and take their stuff, like there's that option too. Um, and I don't know if the powerful like I don't think there's going to be a powerful few on the server if that was the case, because as soon as you hit the level cap, you now have access to working your way up to their level too. Um, Whether that's through buying gear from other crafters, crafting yourself, running dungeons to get gear that matches theirs, and then you could go compete for their stuff too, um, which gives you something to aim for, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, um, we're approaching 37 minutes here. Um, give your final thoughts on what you think the game has to be in order for you to enjoy it in the long run. Just kind of like a summary of stuff.
Um if they want me to enjoy it for a long time, there's got to be that um just that divisiveness as you get later and later into the game. I have to make more and more decisions that force me away from other things
Mm,
that I then either have to experience. I then either have to go back and make a new character, or find somebody in the game who's doing those things. You know what I mean? Like
right. It's important that there's never enough time to do everything. In
right.
other words,
It's important that there's always something else for me that I could be doing.
yeah, and I think I think that can be. I agree. That's the thing that I'd be looking for is everything has to take time. It's got to take enough time that and that's a struggle because you have the casual players and you have to give them something, but
Right. Oh, I want to be max level, but like that's the enjoyment of the game. The enjoyment of the game is that you're doing something,
yeah.
and once you reach the end, you're done.
And maybe that's the
So
issue is that they struggle with is that they know there's a huge player base out there that doesn't have the time but wants the time, but yet they want to make this game that is awesome. So isn't it better to cater to the smaller, way more dedicated crowd that's going to consistently pay your bills every single month because they're playing the game constantly for a long time? Or is it better to get new players in constantly? What's, you know,
what about a resting XP that like if you're only reaching a certain amount of hours per week, you get a buff to your XP gain.
yeah, I mean, yeah, they do that in WoW and they do that in Final Fantasy. So, and it works. That's one reason why they do it. The
And so that
longer,
caters to that casual player who doesn't get the time to play. They can play for less hours and get there, but it's still taking them 7 months to master blacksmithing because they're only playing
yeah,
4 hours a week. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's ever been done for crafting. And I think that's something that could be done is they need to have that rested XP for crafting. If you've started blacksmithing and you haven't blacksmithed in, it has to be that you've been logged out of the game. Like, it can't be that you just haven't been doing blacksmithing.
Right.
And then you come back and you can just, if you've got an hour to play, you could bust out blacksmithing for an hour and it would just skyrocket, but they'd have to find a balance there. So
I think that's what it's going to be.
yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. I've definitely been, summarize my feelings about it is I definitely have to change my mindset of like, this is not an RPG. It's going to be a PvP heavy landscape. I'm going to have to get used to that, playing that. And it's got to have the depth. It's got to have the variety for me. It's got to have something PvE where I'm able to collaborate with a group of players to try to strategize to beat it. If I can just tank and spank everything where like you just stand there and take the damage and I just stand there and whip it and can complete it and there's no thought behind it, I'm going to lose interest. I've got to have strategy. There's got to be a reason for me to get into a company and like on a weekly basis be talking to my company about, okay, the next war, what are we going to do? What's our strategy? What's our thoughts? How are we going to do that? Like even a game as small as what was that game on mobile? Clash of Clans. Like we used to plan for our clan wars every day of the week until the clan war happened once a week because it was important on how each person built their castle, who was going to attack who. All that was super important and it took a lot of planning, and that's what I want out of it is, that interaction with, if it's going to be PvP, I want that strong interaction with the other players that I have to do in order to play the game. I don't want to be able to just run in there, matchmaking, and be a solo player because I know I'll do that. I know I won't interact with the other people. I want to be forced to interact with other players. So that's important to me. So, any final thoughts? That's it?
No, I think it's going to be a lot of fun either way.
Yeah, it'll definitely take up some time.
I just hope, I just don't know how long it'll take. I don't know how long it'll be fun. So
that's could be 3 days, and we're like, dang, we've done everything. But hopefully,
I think I'll get at least a full week of playtime.
Yeah, I could see myself playing it solid for a month. I'm gonna at least get that max level and everything, and give it a good go on the crafting before I make a final decision. So
right.
All right. Well, good conversation. We'll have to do these more often. This is just our first discussion, so we're messing around with how to do this. And we'll be looking forward to playing New World on the 25th.
Yeah.
All right. Later.
Catch you guys later.